Oklahoma State just landed a massive transfer portal addition. Is this the trend that they're setting, though, by taking a player that is not from the Power Four to end up being a big-time Power Four player?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your latest recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $250 in bonus bets when they win their first $5 bet. Oklahoma State has been known to take some under-the-radar recruits, and they have been trending with some under-the-radar transfer portal players. Offensive tackle is obviously a premium position, and the Cowboys just got a G5 guy that is a long-standing developmental situation. A guy that starts at defensive line, slowly transitions to offensive line, has taken some time, but really blossomed in 2024, Markeel Samuel. To figure out if the Cowboys are setting a trend with this, I brought in my guy, Cody Stovall. How you doing, Cody? Everything
well,
good?
I'm doing better now. Obviously, this is an exciting time for all of us, and maybe I should take a cue from the Texas book and say we're back. Whatever that means, I'm not 100% sure yet. But it's kind of ironic that you and I were having this conversation last week, and then right after the show, you kind of sent me this deal, and then I read the article about him being on the top 10 most available transfers guys right now. Obviously, Nico, I'm leaving you being number one. But he fell in that line of an individual that you feel like should be able to plug and play to some degree while also not fully realizing the benefits of what he can actually become yet.
I think this is a great story because so many kids start out as kind of a raw player.
Right.
It doesn't work out at one spot. They move to another. Like his first 2 years in 2021, both those years he was a D end and he barely played at Appalachian State.
Correct.
Okay, Markeel Samuel was just a project. Let's try him at offensive line. 22, he barely played. But Cody, things started to change. That second year on offensive line, here are his numbers per Pro Football Focus. Take him for what they're worth. His offensive grade, you're like, 46.2, run blocking 52.8, pass protection 29.2. It didn't look good. But then this year, he went up to 53.1. Pass protection was 54.8, run blocking 52.4. He got a lot better, and he's only really been doing it a couple of years. And by the way, he's 6'4", 300 pounds. That helps a little bit.
It does. Well, and I think one of the biggest beauties here, Brian, is going to be versatility. You mentioned coming into college as a defensive end, but he was getting recruited out of high school as a linebacker before he kind of made that transition to defensive end. So it wasn't just, 4 years ago that he was 6'3", 205 pounds. And now he's 6'4", 300 pounds. That is quite the transformation. And I think it goes without saying, him going from linebacker to defensive end in college. And he did turn down guys like Charlotte and Cincinnati, to kind of go to Appalachian State. And it took him a little bit of time to get his feet wet. But now that he kind of understands that position, with a little bit of understanding on the opposite side of the ball, I think we're only scratching the surface of what he could potentially be. Especially now that Stillwater has 3 different offensive line coaches. So his exorbitant ability to cram in information like studying for a final should be kind of, come to fruition more in Oklahoma State.
Yeah, they're getting a guy that there's no slam dunk here, but the athleticism, again, he was a kid that was an edge player.
Yeah.
This is rare. Like, it's one thing to switch sides. It's another to gain roughly 100 pounds.
Right.
So I think it's a trendsetter, and that's why I led the podcast with that. So I've got a few things to ask. Number one, can Markeel Samuel take another step this next year? You mentioned they've got 3 different coaches at Oak State, but not only take another step, but understand the level. It's different when the guys in front of you are all basketball-type athletes playing defensive end with a helmet. That's basically what defensive ends are in the P4. They're guys that could play basketball in some capacity, like a D2, D3 level. They can jump. They have athleticism. They have the ability to use their length. It's harder. So what's your take? Is this kind of the new trend? Team's going to go this route? What do you think?
Well, I think you have to blend the heavy hitters in the transfer portal with some of these guys that are viewed to some degree as a little bit of a risk. I do think that a potential red shirt is an option here. Not that that would be an ideal scenario because he had other suitors like KU and UCF where he likely wouldn't have had to deal with any type of red shirt. But I liken this in Cowboy country to Dalton Cooper. Dalton Cooper came in out of Texas State, had 1,300 starts and only gave up like 9 sacks and 1,300 snaps. And this is pretty similar here because, Markel last year had 120 snaps, gave up 5 sacks. And as you'd mentioned, he was kind of working up to that spot. So he really only has one full year at tackle. He did get 400 snaps at tackle the year prior. And as you mentioned, the grades his junior year were not very good. So his 400 snaps were not a very good sample size. But then he transitions that into a remarkable season last year. And lastly, the grades he had in the last game were all in the 70s and 80s.
Exactly.
All correctly. So you're talking about somebody that is just gradually getting better. The competition is going to be a little bit of a differentiation here. But much like Dalton Cooper was our best offensive lineman when he was not injured this previous 2 years. So that Texas State to Oklahoma State, did it take him a few games to understand it? Yes, it did. But once he got his feet underneath him, he was a really difficult individual and ended up being our best offensive lineman coming from Texas State. I think this is one of those positions where you come from doesn't matter quite as much.
Yeah, I agree with you. And when we come back, I want to talk about that last game where you said the grades went up, how that impacts a player, because mentality with offensive lines a lot, because you're going to get beat sometimes. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
If you want to have the right mindset, it's not going to work out. We're going to talk about that next here on the Portal Podcast. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes it betting easy because all you got to do is get on the app and you can do anything you want. You can pick point spreads, player props. Like I'm a big 3-point shooter guy. So how many threes is a player going to hit? How many points are they going to get in a half? A lot of different ways to do it. And if you miss the beginning of the game, you can do live betting. So don't miss out. Head over to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Cody, you brought up that he really improved towards the end of this last year. So let's talk a little bit about Markeel Samuel's last game, and this is against Georgia Southern. Offensive grade per Pro Football Focus, 76.2. Run blocking, 72.1. Pass protection, 78.5. Maybe the light came on. I mean, I know just because I live somewhat close to that school. They get players. They get a lot of guys that transfer down from the Florida States, North Carolinas, and stuff like that. It's not hard at that level to get some pretty darn good talent. So when I saw that, I'm like, okay, this is probably a good sign. And that's probably one of the reasons he got the phone calls that he did from P4 schools.
Yeah.
Because you need a little more. Like, where's the film? And I'm sure they've went over the film. They have access to stuff you and I don't from all kinds of angles, and that's fine.
Right.
All 22 film and all that stuff. But look, if you have a guy like that coming in, and I'm guessing because he played some left tackle, I bet you he could probably, if you've trained him right, swing to right tackle or guards to narrow. This is where the experience part comes in too, because sometimes guys get hurt and you're just in a bad spot. You got to ask a guy in the middle of the season, look, bro, got a backup tackle is pretty good. We're going to slide him in, but our backup guard is just, he's not the guy. We got to move you in. I like experienced players because I think they're more likely to accept that role. What's your take on that?
No, I think that is perfectly summed up by what Mike Gundy is looking for. This is something that Mike Gundy's talked about for years and years and years. Oklahoma State has gotten by, as most universities have, on like 7 or 8 main offensive linemen, right? Well, but part of that is a little bit different for Gundy is you want to have a couple centers, right? You want to have your starting 5, and then you also want to have a couple swing guys. So guys that can play right tackle, left tackle, or guard if need be. I think this is a conversation where Markel kind of fits into that conversational piece. Is he going to play left tackle? Maybe, maybe not. Could he play right tackle? Absolutely. Could you seemingly be able to slide him into guard? Well, athletically, you're not going to have any issues, whether you have a pulling tackle or a pulling guard. He should be able to fulfill that role. And he has played a decent amount of football from both sides of the ball, right? So if you do have a pulling guard or a pulling tackle, who better to do that than somebody that did play defensive end for quite a few years, especially at the collegiate level. So he's seeing things, I think, from a different angle. You mentioned earlier, it's easy to some degree to get a basketball guy to be converted to a tight end. I think it's a little bit more difficult to have a linebacker turn defensive end, turn tackle, and them not view the game from a little bit of a different landscape, because most big dudes are big dudes their whole lives, right? It's not often that a big dude doesn't become a big dude until he's like 19 years old. Usually big guys are in the middle of the craziness most of their lives. So it is, I think, athletically a little bit different from his angle. And he did play basketball primarily in high school, as well as moonlighting as a linebacker. So I do think the versatility you just mentioned is key for this acquisition for the Cowboys.
I would agree. And I think it's also intriguing. I don't know what their interior O-line scenario is, but you got to cross-train nowadays because so many guys hit the portal, so many guys get hurt. You have to prepare for, I know this is awful, prepare for the worst. They don't have 3 O-line coaches in Stillwater to have them standing around.
Correct. Well, and I think you can look no further than Oklahoma State's Tevin Jenkins. He was a right guard for years at Oklahoma State. Got moved to left tackle. Sorry. He had a phenomenal year, all-pro or all-American level season. Gets drafted by the Bears. He's supposed to be their starting left tackle. Then they move him to right tackle. Then they move him to guard. And now he's the tried and true all-day, everyday guard that's getting major money because of that versatility. If that wouldn't have happened at Oklahoma State, his NFL career would have lasted 2 years and he'd have been gone.
It's amazing how that works out, man.
It is.
It is really amazing. So my final question here, how does Markeel Samuel take to the P4 level? This is the hardest question. I saved it for last. Mentally, how do you prepare somebody? And App State's one of the better G5 programs. Right. Let me be very
clear. Correct.
But it's still not the same as the physicality from week to week. Like they'll play Tennessee or NC State, or they'll play 2 or 3 of those games, but you don't play them every single week. And that the attrition that you take on your body, it's hard to explain to people. Like, you know what I'm talking. Like when you walk up to a 300-pounder and you shake his hand, those human beings are not normal. You know what I'm talking about, but it's different. How do you prepare a guy for that?
Well, I think the evolution for him is going to be huge, right? You mentioned it. App State is one of those teams that you don't really want to schedule. North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Appalachian State, Wyoming. Those are teams that you do not want to have on your schedule because they're good enough to creep up and get you. So that means they're not devoid of talent, right? We all know that. And I think as it pertains directly to Markel, his last game being in that 78 range, 76 range from a PFF grades, that should indicate to him, okay, I started off as a not very good prospect, and now I'm somebody that I feel I can hold my own. That confidence is absolutely key, but you do have to do it week by week, and the Big 12 is different. As much as everybody wants to talk about how great the Big 10 is, they just won the last 2 national titles, so they should be. At the same time, the Big 10 has something the Big 12 doesn't. That has a few games on your schedule that you're likely going to win, even if you don't play any of your starters. That is not going to happen in the Big 12. So I do think that injuries are going to be kind of paramount to this conversation as well. So if Markel fits into that piece, that's that swing guy that can do guard and tackle, likely the inevitability is he's going to play at some point in time in the season. And I think a big indication is that 78 pass grade. The Cowboys, I think, are going to plan on airing the ball out significantly more this year. So getting somebody that fits in that classification, it's absolutely massive, even if it's not just for like some semblance of spot duty. Like if you're down by 23 and you're going in the fourth quarter, you know you're going to have to air it out. You're not going to be running it a lot. Maybe you put in somebody like Markel, who is better in that department, as opposed to maybe the traditional starter is going to be more relegated to the run game.
There's a lot of ways you can look at it, but again, I think the versatility is the biggest thing.
And I think if he embraces that, right, just the fact that I come from a different landscape of all of these other offensive linemen could be something that's accentuated. You ready by this? Cooper Bassett is the head offensive line coach, who was a former Cowboy, who was a defensive end that was converted to a tackle after 2 years of playing D-end at Oklahoma State. So who else to help with this transition than Cooper Bassett?
What a great story. That's small world right there, Cody.
Yeah.
That's really good stuff. Can you tell everybody where you can get your work at, man?
Yeah, obviously Locked On Oklahoma State. Go check out what Prospect Sports 7-on-7 has rocking and rolling. Epic Sports. We do some one-on-one combine stuff. I absolutely love covering this. I love having these conversations. And as much as I think the portal's not great for college football, I will admit, whenever you end up on the right side of it, it is a pretty cool conversational piece.
Absolutely.
Because Kansas and UCF fans are kicking themselves right now.
Yeah.
Right. And we just got Christian Fitzpatrick from Marshall, too, 6'4", 215-pound wide receiver. Like, the getting is good in Stillwater. And lastly, I will also add another reason why I think this is a very big deal is because the Cowboys have been somewhat open, and the fact that we've got like 22 offensive linemen. We have a decent number that we acquired in the portal. We've got a decent number of young guys. So we weren't really going to go after very many, not only in the recruiting cycle, but in the portal. So for this guy to pop up, it's either an indication that we knew we had to have him, or we know we have a few guys that are about to exit. One or the other. We were comfortable with where we were, and this was obviously a major acquisition for us that 2 weeks ago you wouldn't have told me we were going to go try to do.
Welcome to the transfer portal era,
yes,
Mr. Stovall.
You nailed it.
So you can find the Portal Podcast the same places you can find Locked On Oklahoma State. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, anywhere you get your pods. Please like and subscribe. Give us a 5-star review. This has been the Portal Podcast.